Stefan. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. It is 12 minutes past 9 in a Singapore evening, so I'm bearing up pretty well for a long working day, but surviving with a
Thank
smile on my
you
face.
so much. Thanks for that. I know it's a very long day and late also, so thank you so much for making yourself available. Thank you. First of all, Stefan, maybe you can introduce yourself in a few words. I'll introduce myself as well afterwards, and then we can start with the light on interview, which is putting light on you today.
How exciting. It's when I was thinking, I had a quick look at the list of questions. I was looking at this one, and it brought to mind an encounter between a monk and a Zen guide who said the Zen master is asking the guy, "Who are you?" And the guy goes, "My name is Stephen Turner. I'm 41 years old. I'm head of Asia Pacific for a alcohol drinks market research company." And then the master goes, "But that is not you. Who is the real you?" And the guy carries on explaining, "Well, I've traveled around the world. I've lived in London and Bangkok and Singapore. This is also not you." And then the guy starts to laugh. And the Zen master goes, "This is you." So maybe the smile is me.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else is superfluous.
Quite a cosmopolitan person. You travel the world, as you said, a lot, and you're also ahead in your company, very inspiring profile and talented profile as well. So I'm very happy that you can actually inspire other people today and give us some lights on what you do today, what are your expectations for the future, and how you see what is your vision of your life and what's going on right now in the world as well. So we're going to see all these kinds of things in the interview. I'll just take a few moments to introduce myself. I'm Aziza, and I'm going to be boring as well. I'm the general manager of Trade Corp. Apart from that, I'm very interested.
But who is the real you, Aziza? Who is the real you?
Very interested into people, empowering people, actually. That's my main mission in life, empowering others, empowering myself to empower others. So I'm pretty much in my mission right now when I'm putting a light on people like you, actually. So travel the world, been a consultant in compliance and quality affairs for around 15 years now. So and my work enabled me to travel the world and sense a bit of different cultures, different ideas, different visions in life, which has enriched me a lot. So very glad to be here actually now to know more about you. So can you please tell us who you are finally, Stefan?
I'll give you the dull version. So I said my name's Stephen. In terms of job, I am head of Asia Pacific for a global market research company. So I run the business from India right across to New Zealand, so 18 countries, obviously both India and China included. So it's pretty big role. We're growing a team very quickly here, which is a lot of fun. So I guess part of me is definitely my sort of commercial persona. I really enjoy the cut and thrust of business. Keeps me on my toes. I have a pretty wide and eclectic range of interests and aspects of life, which I think we will come to over the next hour. But everything from sport to music festivals to meditation. I studied history at university, so everything to do with like history, philosophy, understanding. Although I'm not religious in a capital R sense, but understanding aspects of philosophy and theology are fascinating. So I think it helps us to understand who we are, and it has a surprisingly big impact into how we see the world and how we think about things and make decisions. One of the big, I guess, focuses for myself at the moment is unpicking that socialization process, because I think it gives you a crisper and clearer view of like who you are, how you interact with the world more effectively. It just makes life more interesting. I think when you can start to unpeel things that have been imposed upon you over time. It's important to be aware of social constructs, but if you can slip out of them around the side and then have a look from the outside, I think it makes for an interesting, more interesting day.
I'm sure. So what do you want to put light on today? Of course, I'm putting light on you, but what is it that you want to stress and what is it that you want to put light on today?
I think a little bit about, I will ebb and flow a little bit, but I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot myself is about kind of this concept of waking up. I know it's a little bit of a overused term sometimes in bits of Eastern philosophy, but I think it's something which is very relevant to both personal life and professional life. if you can, how to say, if you can take a slightly more connected view of yourself in the world, rather than feeling that you are very isolated and living with a very kind of personal ego, where that's why I chose not to introduce myself kind of fully at the beginning. I think if I over-identify myself as this head of APAC, head of business, really big balls, it's not particularly, it doesn't serve me very well, right? It's important to recognize that is a role that I can fulfill. But it's a little bit more, but I think it's more interesting to think about how you feel, how you connect with the world, right? So I think the thing I'd like to get across today is to counterpose some traditional ideas that people have, and maybe look at things from a few different angles. Because I think whether you're looking at how you perceive yourself, how other people perceive yourself, but also where you feel like you fit, I think it's really important to challenge some of the perceptions that are built up by society as a whole, or that you've maybe imposed on yourself.
Speaking of, how do you think people perceive you, Stephen?
I was about to say arrogant, but no, it's a fine line. It's important in my job to walk a very it's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance always. But no, I think there's this always generally a smile, and definitely accessible. So I think that's on the positive side for sure. I think people find me open, easy to reach. Probably this is why we are having this this call.
Yes, definitely.
And easy to connect with, and it's why I work in commercial business, because it swings both ways, right? When I engage with other clients and companies, they feel that they're dealing with someone genuine. So I think it's a quality which I would like to think is both real and true, but comes across in both personal interactions and professional interactions. And increasingly, I find that it's possible to have a much smaller jump from your personal to professional life when you kind of feel relatively relaxed in your own skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are you doing right now, maybe more specifically, and what are your main challenges, roadblocks in your current activity, if you may share a bit with us?
On the work side or life in general?
You can speak about your life as well. Professionally and personally, yeah.
Yeah, we can do a bit of both. The work side, I joined my current company about 16, 17 months ago, tasked pretty much with just moving out to Southeast Asia and rebuilding the businesses, Asia Pac business almost from scratch. We had some operation in the area, but so that's been a really multidimensional challenge. You have to think. I was working from home all of last year, sat in my spare room in my flat in Singapore, and you have to imagine an entire huge region of space and what kind of projects are going to work. We had to hire an entirely new team, get big projects off the ground. I said in India and China. China has been a bit more of a challenge, but focus in India has worked very well. And engaging with a vast array of companies, from the very big, the multinationals in the alcohol industry, through to a really wide range of medium-sized companies, consultancies, banks, and so spinning many plates. So it's on the professional side, it's definitely been about quickly adjusting to a new working environment, new team structure, learning how to work remotely, and all of that stuff. And on the personal side, doing all that while keeping sane. So it's been last year was a phenomenal challenge to work at that speed and that intensity, while also finding space outside of work, which was limited in terms of activity because Singapore was very restricted. How do you find balance, right, in that situation? So I think it's the positive of COVID has been that it forces, for people like myself that tend to run at a very high speed all the time, it forced me to slow down and forced me to stop and think. And it wasn't an option for me to, in my spare time, just to sit and be bored or, be like a kind of recovering, blancmange. You need to that time out of work had to also be constructive and proactive. So whether that was what you read, what you listen to, learning to cook better, these kind of things. But it's been a big challenge, I would say, personally, for the last couple of years, personally and professionally, but in a good way.
How big is your company, Stephen?
So we are moving very fast all the time. We're about 80 people at the moment, give or take, and we will be aiming to be around a £20 million company this year.
Oh, that's quite huge.
Yeah, medium size for agency work, but yeah, it's.
Yeah, I was thinking, what are the partnerships that you're looking to create more in order to sustain your growth? What is it that you're looking for right now?
Again, this I guess splits into two ways. So I mean, on the professional side, for sure, we have to keep focused on making good partnerships with the management teams of companies all over the region and all over the world. And it's and it's something that happens as companies get bigger. We improve our internal interaction between myself, my counterparts in the US and the European business, making sure that clients we work with join the dots effectively as well. I think it's super interesting. I think it's an increasing part of business now is to have really good professional networks where you can bring in ideas and link to other people that are in similar or different sectors, but have some overlapping experience, because you can bring their challenges, their experiences, their learnings into your own business, and not just professional, but their own personal experiences as well. Because I think you find that people that you imagine that, and this will again come up later in the interview, but the idea of heroes or people that should be put on pedestals is something that I don't really get along well with. And I think it's interesting when you meet people that are quite senior to see the challenges they've been through, the moments of doubt, the stresses that they've been through. And it's often not through being a great visionary always, but it's just perseverance and people that can stay, stable and calm, and remember that whatever, pardon my French, but whatever shit you're going through today may well pass, and that tomorrow, you'll wake up and the sun will still shine, and things can sort of get back on.
That's what it is. After the rain, the sun, right?
Exactly.
Well, I think maybe you may want to share about how the current situation is treating your company right now, and in particular, what did you have to do to cope with the current situation? You said you were isolated for almost a year, working from home on your own, managing a team, perhaps remotely, hiring people remotely. I mean, how did you manage all of that? It looks for me like impressive, like almost incredible.
Yeah, we all have different like character traits. I'm not so good on the fine details, right? I'm definitely not a micro person. My brain thinks generally quite wide on blue skies. So but this is the nature of, I think the challenge of the last couple of years was you had to think things into existence, which is quite difficult, right? You really have to. I sat down with my boss when I first joined the company, and we made a plan. And you have to kind of just embed that into your brain that this is possible, this can be done, and you create. We had maybe 5 or 6 key objectives through the back end of 2021, which were to grow revenue, to hire a team, to build these 2 major strategic projects, to much better account manage our key clients, to create a whole network of new opportunities and possibilities, and not only hire a team, but hire the right team, right? So get the right people on board. And it's one of those things. Sometimes under a little bit of pressure, your brain sharpens up. Like last year it was a case of there was no failure, but my boss is also very good, a very pragmatic thinker, and we worked well together. So I had someone one step up to bounce ideas off, and we failed on a few. We failed and then succeeded mainly. We didn't fail and fail. So a couple of hires we had to rehire. But yeah, it was a huge effort because, like, for me to not be able to get out on travel and to meet, I'm a tactile person, and I'm an extrovert. So COVID is like my existential crisis. So to do something which requires a huge amount of energy and nervous energy, because you have to really pour yourself into the role and the different objectives that you have, to then not have a release where you get to see people, to have human contact with people, really it burns it kind of burns at your nerve endings. So it was tough, but
as an extrovert, I mean, you recharge with people, right? You recharge
with people through physical contact, through emotional contact. So to have a lot less of that was tough. So you try to connect as much as possible with people that you know, build good connections with your colleagues. I think that's one of the benefits that I think people have found with my colleagues and my clients, to work really hard on those personal relationships, because then your working day is so much more interesting and doesn't feel as tough, right? You finish your working day not like stressed and demoralized, but kind of energized by the people you're working with, and also it's very much a two-way process, right? When your colleagues get on screen and they have had a tough day and it's the middle of UK winter, they're in lockdown, and they see this smiling face in what they think is tropical paradise in Singapore, right? And you're like, so, and then they're happier, you're happier, right? It's that kind of win-win scenario as much as possible. But of course, there are tough days in there.
It looks like there is a space around work, that there is a broader scope around work, that you manage to establish a relationship between people, between others. And that's very important to build trust and cooperation. And but yeah, so what are your bigger plans, objectives, and ambitions?
Yeah, it's a $64,000 question. No, I mean, I think I learned a lot. So before I joined the company, I'd left my previous company when I was working in Bangkok, and I'd taken some time out. And I said I drank a little bit too much, maybe a little bit too much of the kind of Jay Shetty Kool-Aid. Just a little bit. I wanted to spend a bit of time traveling and do a deeper dive into the meditation and this kind of stuff. What I realized was that I'm much more of an and than an or person. It's not to do this or that. I need to have a real balance in life. And so part of it the last couple of years has been to enjoy COVID aside, but it's been to enjoy having the balance of a job that I enjoy in the commercial sphere, which provides me with, it gives me the get up and go, and it sharpens my mind doing the corporate commercial business. Because then when I move into my free time and I want to really kind of these lofty ambitions where I don't have particular material ambitions. I mean, it's learning to live with enough, and especially given the environmental constraints that we have brought upon ourselves, I think this is very important. But I think it's much more about like how you are, right? So it's very much not part of the culture to use the word objective. So I try not to use the word objective, but the direction, I would say, the direction of travel, it's just about being more aware. And I definitely ascribe to a slightly more kind of Eastern-based philosophical approach, which is to understand that there is not really a center of things, and you're much more part of what's going on around you. And I think it's this ability to flow once you start to become a little bit less connected to a narrative of yourself and a narrative of your life situation or position, that you become a little bit more mentally expansive. And so if I talk about where I'm trying to get to, there is not a specific point, but my direction of travel is to be mentally expansive, to be available and accessible to people, to focus on what I would say a kind of a shrewd compassion. It's not about just kind of some concept of just giving everything of yourself, and you have to be aware of your emotional capacity, but whether it's within work, with your colleagues, with clients, with people that you meet outside of work, developing that capacity, because it's something which is, it's a very positive selfishness, because you get a lot out of that for yourself in terms of those interactions.
May I ask you, because I sense your objectives, if I may say, in between your objectives and ambitions are more like concepts, becoming more compassionate, becoming more expansive. Is it due to the uncertainty?
So I'm going to just correct, just to be sure, it's expansive, not expensive. I would like to be more expensive, but definitely more expansive.
Okay. No, but the uncertainty of the current situation right now, or have you changed through this last 2 years, or have you always been like that?
No, for sure. It's been, I'd say, like probably from my mid-30s, I realized that just living at 100 miles an hour in a kind of business sport, party lifestyle, whatever, it has a limitation, right? You cannot do that 24/7, and it was important to start to find another. I haven't brought myself through a kind of religious background, but I think we all need some component of smaller spirituality in our life to find some, to work, to feel connected to life. But I would say that on the other hand, though, I'm not like devoid of the professional ambition. In terms of the work that we do, we're growing. I think it's important to have some, I guess, tangible or material challenges. Where my boss has set me a Everest-like commercial target for the year, and it's fun to figure out how to hit that. And then because the the problem-solving aspect of achieving that. Your brain is designed to solve problems, and you need to give your brain the right problems to solve. But I think having some more traditional constructive problems, like how to kind of win at work or how to do well in the business environment, gives your brain the tools to then approach some of the other more existential problems. For me anyway, my brain is more active when it has that. I'm dealing with both at the same time than just one or the other.
Okay. How can we reach out to your company? The easiest way, via medias or email, or how do you reach out to people? What are your main means of communication?
So how do I reach out to my contact network and to my
how do people can reach out to you? Is it easy to reach out to you? Are you on social medias? Or?
Yeah, so I mean, for professionally, we mainly use LinkedIn.
Yeah,
it's the primary way that we interact. I mean, we have long-standing relationships with most of the major companies in the sector that we work in globally. So it's but if I want to find new contacts, people around my clients, then we use LinkedIn a lot. We obviously it's also important to use. Interlinking between ourselves and the company. It's one of the kind of lost roots, but making sure that between those of us that work in the company that we are sharing contacts and we know who we are talking to, and it's how to say 6 degrees of separation almost. Okay, I know this person who knows that person who knows that person, and so it's important to keep weaving up networks and connections. But LinkedIn is super helpful for the professional side of things.
Okay.
And we don't really use Facebook or Instagram or anything like that because we're very much a B2B company. So
yeah, I suppose. Okay. What has been or is the best moment in your life so far?
So these kind of how to say more quantitative questions, I tend to kind of as in they require a quantifiable or fixed answer. I find very difficult to focus on because it's very much dependent on kind of how you are and who you are in different points of time. So I can never really give an answer to that question. There are landmark points, whether it's getting good grades from high school or getting your degree certificate at the end of university. They're kind of important because when you're young in life, it's important to have it is helpful to have markers which signify something that you've achieved. It's also a slight both positive and negative of the society that we have. But I don't have those particular points. There are things that I'm personally more proud of, I would say. Some of which are more personal and some of which are professional. And some of them are pulling through times which are particularly difficult. But I find it hard to say at best time. I'm definitely someone that wakes up in the morning and goes, okay, what fun can be had today, right? What is the opportunity of today to be had? And
so you're more in the moment.
I try. I mean, if I just off the top of my head, I could think of 100 different parties or music festivals where at any one of those, if you'd asked me, I would probably say that this is the best time of my life. I could also pick,
I see.
And I'm a big football fan, so quite a few of the times when Liverpool has come back from a deficit to win a major sporting tournament, they were also good fun. Or amazing times with family or partners. I find it very hard to define an individual point because I think it goes against the nature of how to live happily to say that this is better than this and this. It's comparison is generally a route to unhappiness because when you're comparing something with something else, this is better or worse. But I think you just have to take each situation on its merits and enjoy it for what it is. Even some of the times I've had bad sports injuries, even at the time I could smile because sometimes it was my own fault and my own stupidity. Sometimes something totally beyond my control, but sometimes you can still look back with some kind of strange fondness at the, things that you might not think were the good times of your life.
So your motto could be carpe diem, enjoy the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, now is now. Yesterday, it's vanished. I was listening to something quite interesting which said, literally, even the you or the me that started this call is not the same you or I that will finish this call. And this is a very interesting way to look at things. You're literally, yesterday is gone. There are things to you, but you have to let these things go, and just look at the present moment and the upcoming moments as opportunities.
It's still useful to have this past, but it is gone. That is true. What are, according to you, the main traits of character of a man like you, of a leader like you?
You could have called me a leader of men. That would have sounded really good. But then I would also sound very arrogant. A leader? No, I'm joking. No, I think the thing that I've learned is in lots of aspects, and it's partly to be comfortable in the type of job that I have now, but I think you need a few things. You do need some drive, right? You need to look at things because you need to be able to sell, or you need to be able to convince people to come with you on a journey. And that requires energy and positivity. But it cannot be fake. So I think you need, when you're choosing what you're doing, you need to. It's not that I work for a humanitarian organization where you can really extol amazing virtues. We work for it's a cool company. We work in a sector which is perfectly legal. It's all good fun. But we're not changing the world. We are doing something which is still interesting and innovative. But I think it's being genuine, right? I think if you want to get people to follow you, and that means whether that's attracting clients, if I need to convince the management team of a big blue chip company to work with us, or to work with us to a greater extent, they need to buy into you as a person, because they're buying into you, the project. If when I'm hiring people and I want to hire good people, I also need them to buy into me, that they're going to enjoy working with you, that you're going to be genuine, and that you're going to look after them both personally and professionally. We make a big play in the company, and certainly in this region, and I think it's fairly true across the company, that we really look after people. When I try to look out for my team and try to notice when they're having a bad day, and that can be physically or emotionally, right? So you need to give people space and time. So I think you need to be. There's some basic things. I think being accessible is incredibly important. People need to feel that they can reach you. You also need to be able to defend your space. So with not so much with your colleagues, but with your clients. You need to be able to defend your space. So I, will react to clients when I can, and if I can't, then I don't. But I think generally just having a sense of accessibility to people around you, that they know that they get the version of you that they get is consistent. Because I've had some catastrophically bad bosses in my time, and some very good ones, but the ones that are consistent and calm can put you at ease very quickly. We approach problems together. When things go wrong, which they will do, I approach the problems with my team together. Sometimes they're problems which have come to bring in my team members to help me, because two of my team are virtually the same level of seniority as me. They're research directors. And we need to really work together closely. And so if people trust each other, they know that they'll not have their time abused, then it creates a much better working environment.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What are the skills that you think are essential to acquire in order to succeed, to achieve your professional objectives?
Good question. Some of them are skills and some of them are traits, right? So I think you have to. It's always good to look around you and see what the people that you interact with, especially early in your career, like how the people that are successful, what are they doing? What are the approaches that they have? Some of these things are quite mechanical. So if you work in a commercial world, it can be really simple. Like, it's understanding how many calls do I need to make, how many meetings do I need to have. So you need to train yourself to be quite rhythmic at the beginning, so that you really understand how to, because you don't have the skills inbuilt, or you don't have the experience there to begin with. I think it really depends on the career. Like for me, in the commercial world, the underlying skills are very much about communication. So you have to be a good communicator. Some of this is kind of inbuilt. You've got to be someone that likes to talk, but you can learn to be a good communicator who's clear and succinct, or you can just be someone that rambles endlessly. So to be able to communicate clearly, I said before, like this concept of being very genuine. I think you'll find a lot of salespeople, they do not realize that, but they're compulsive liars. The lies are often not harsh lies, I would say. They're often little smoothing over edges here or exaggerations here. But I think learning to do business where you can extol the virtues of your company or your team without having to exaggerate, and you can really focus on what is actually there. People will people are much more intuitive and perceptive than you might think, and they will see that you are genuine. And even if the next person, the next company, they lavish much more, attention on aspects of their company, or they really oversell what they do, people often see through that because they'll see that they're being sold to. And I think this is one of the most important lessons that I learned, is that you don't need to oversell. Just find a way to communicate things clearly and crisply. But you asked me about skills, right?
I sense you're talking about moral ethics, because we all have different levels of moral and ethics, and there is no clear standard at work on how much do you have to be.
I really see people walk through the door who on the one side of the office door, they have one set of ethics, and on the other side, they have another set of ethics. And this is really, I see it a lot. I've sat in many, many meetings with many, many major companies, and just sat with people where the topic of conversation in the meeting room would not be something that their, HR or CSR or corporate social responsibility teams would like to have in the public domain. So I think it's important to try and retain that level of ethicality, if that is the right word. But on the skill side, I don't know. I always go back to communication and keeping a good attitude, because I think when you're working, whatever is happening in your personal life, if you can try and inject a little positivity into your business relationships, whether your colleagues or your clients, it improves your own day, because they can feel that coming from you, and you'll get that back from them as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, general questions. What annoys you or revolts you the most?
It's a little bit two sides of the same coin. I think probably abuse of power. We have a pretty good example going on in Ukraine at the moment. But I think I've seen it a lot at work, people bullying, right? So I've had it from managers directly to me. I've had it from when I've been working with client companies where they really are trying to abuse you as an agency in terms of, expecting you to work 24 hours a day for them. I think whether you look at the political world, the business world, we've seen examples in the charity sector as well. I think examples with a couple of the major companies where, there were significant abuses of power, where people found themselves in situations. And I think this is one of the it rankles me or riles me, because I think it's something where someone who's subordinate cannot help but do the thing that you say to them. And I think it's really important if you have power to try or have influence or power to try and use it responsibly. I think the flip side of that is, from the other side of the coin, is that it's important to be compassionate towards people that you might not think deserve it, right? So an example that I have is that I can feel sorry for Hitler. This might seem like a little bit of might not go down that well with many people, but to be inside that guy's head must have been a constant and terrible, tortuous experience, right? To commit to do the things that he did must have come from a very dark and unpleasant place. And I think I started practicing metta meditation 2 or 3 years ago, which is metta is the Pali word. Start off with focusing on people that are very close to you, and because you can project a sense of unconditional love for them, and then you move to people that you're kind of neutral towards, and then move towards people that have actually hurt you, because people commit acts out of anger or from hatred or from or lashing out, normally from a space of insecurity or something bad that has happened to them. I think it's most child abusers have been abused themselves. And I think you can really extend that just about anybody. If you think about some of the people that are associated with the worst atrocities of humanity, I can only imagine what it must have been like to have been in their heads, and I imagine it must have been extremely painful. I think so. On the one hand, I have on the one, it's a bit of like, that's why I said it's two sides of the same coin. You can look at a Hitler or a Stalin or whatever and see the horrors, but then you can also, and within the same two eyes, you can also show compassion towards people. And I think people that are unable to, I think we like to put people on pedestals, and this is why I think it's so unhelpful, because I'm sure that like, any of the people that, the Mother Teresa's and Gandhis and the Mandelas of this world probably had a bad side, which is not portrayed to the media so much. And the worst people that we have in the world also would have had a good side hidden somewhere. And I think it's really important to not get dewy-eyed about people so much, in that there is not really good and evil. There is shades of grey on a sliding scale.
Yeah.
So the thing that riles me is the abuse of power, but the thing which kind of aggravates me a lot is a lack of nuance in understanding that people are not one thing or another thing, right? We are multifaceted, and I think this gets badly distorted by the media and the fact we like to view people as a particular thing or in a particular way, which is just not how we are.
Like standardized people.
Yeah, exactly. We like to pigeonhole people.
But talking about, you said abuse of power, it's very interesting because we are two in this call. And I also have been a victim of abuse and bullying at work, and I didn't work for an agency. And that's very interesting that 100% of people in this call have been victims of power abuse. That's quite interesting. I'm just saying it because it's clearly something that the corporate world has to improve.
Yeah, I don't think it's just the core. I think this is something you can find anywhere, whether it's in schools, in hospitals, in charities. I mean, there was the examples. I think wherever you will find power, you will find abuse of power.
And I like that your answer is really like sending unconditional love, like really like you go really the step forward, like you take so much distance and you just, send unconditional love, recognizing that if there is hatred, there is a want, and you recognize, the human being in front of you. And I really strongly believe that if everybody could do that, that would be the end of multiple wars in this world.
Yeah, it doesn't always come naturally, and I'm pretty sure it does not happen always as well. But it's at least it's as I said before, it's not an objective, but it's a direction of travel that you can, at least if you're aware of this as a concept, it's something that you can move towards. And I do certainly find that when people do things towards me, I'll lash out. You have a better capacity to take a step back or just to absorb a little bit or let things through you, because probably that thing is coming from a position of pain or weakness and not from a genuine desire to hurt you. But it's still important, if someone is throwing a punch, try and get out of the way, and then you can show compassion afterwards without getting hit in the first place, right? So.
I see. Okay. What makes you happy? Keep smiling, Stephen.
Almost anything. I think for sure I'm a people person, right? So I get my greatest pleasure from, interacting with people. I think when you're young, you have it automatically, right? You can just, when you're a child, you have this there, right? You can appreciate every small thing. And then we lose track of this as we get older. We have a lot of responsibilities and things that are weighing on our mind. So I think it's really important to enjoy the small things. Again, it's something that, it's just a standard part of like mindfulness training, but it's just to appreciate little things when you're in the shower, like just enjoy being naked with yourself, right? It's what's not to like. So enjoy that. You can enjoy simple things, right? So I think it's finding pleasure in the small things, and for sure getting through COVID, I had to really scale back because I'm naturally quite full on, quite hedonistic. So normally I'd be really at the big music festival, or you're wanting to be at a sporting event or playing sport or drinking with friends or doing something, and to have almost all of these things taken away, it's really it really felt constraining to begin with. So it was very important to refocus on engaging on small things, on small interactions. But for sure, I don't know, I know it's very cliche, but I think if you're like, happiness is so infectious, right? So when you're with people and you're positive and you're smiling, it rubs off on other people. I think this is just something in your day, right? If you can, make your shopkeeper smile, or your dentist or your doctor, right? He just being a little bit cheeky, and it can be anything. That I think you can find anything in your day to be positive about. But it's and again, it's very cliche, but you have much less agency over the things which happen. You can control your reaction. You can control to some extent your reaction to what happens. And from there, you can stay pretty positive. It's not that I don't have bad days. Sometimes you sleep like shit. You're grumpy as hell until you've had about 4 cups of coffee, but you still find a way to. And once you start interacting with people, you realize that all right, it's not that big a deal.
Happy coffees.
Happy coffees, exactly. Only in Amsterdam.
How do you persevere? How do you keep your motivation high? May I ask you to share some tips with us?
Happy coffees. I think it's something you have to work at, right? I've had definitely some some higher and lower points in my life. It's things can happen sometimes all at the same time that you cannot predict. Sometimes you can pick up an injury just at the same time as you're transitioning from one part of life to another one, and suddenly your plans get thrown out of the window, and it's not easy to always be positive. And I certainly through maybe 2019 had a really tough year, readjusting and recalibrating my life, and then COVID hit, and you're just getting yourself refocused and resorted, and so I think you have to focus on small incremental things that you can build into your life, which can always be there. If your happiness revolves around only grandiose statements or major things, then when they get taken away, and this happens as you get older, much of the things that we enjoy now get taken away as we get older. So I think it's going back to enjoying and focusing on small things that you can enjoy. You can still enjoy the big things as well, but you're not reliant on them. So I think there's the necessity of a good quality human interaction and engagement, because that is always something which can be there. On a good day and a bad day, it lifts you up or picks you up to have those engagements and interactions. I think interestingly, the experience from 2 or 3 years ago where I got paid off by my former company. I was in theory a great position, and a few things happened to me that I couldn't have foreseen, and I ended up in a position where, from a position, a very, very nice life position, I found myself in a very difficult life position and had to really rebuild from scratch. And I think that the memory of that is a very good motivator now, is about staying focused. It's not to become obsessive about things that can go wrong, but making sure you keep a good, what are the key foundations or the key building blocks you need to have. I know quite a few life coaches and therapists around me that work on this with people, and it's always about what are the fundamental building blocks that you need to feel kind of grounded. And if you have place, I think you can always build upwards or sideways or loop the loops, whatever you want to do. But
yeah. How do you organize your time?
Badly. No. No, I think I have a few things in my day which are kind of sacrosanct. So whatever else is going on. So I exercise almost every day. I meditate at least once, but ideally twice. They're not long, I'm not sitting there for 3 hours, but just a couple of times a day where I can stop and I would just call them still times, just for engagement. So I build in a few things which are essential, and I eat a lot because I do a lot of exercise and I have a very active mind. Did you know the brain uses your nervous energy burns about 25 to 30% of your calories every day? So for those of us that run on nervous energy, we get to eat all the time without getting fat. It's brilliant, but it's very expensive, right? And it also this takes up 4 slots of my day. So between the exercise, the meditation, and the work, between the exercise, the meditation, and the eating, I then have to fit in my rather large day job. But it's about prioritization. So I had a very good talk at work a few years ago by a guy, and he had a box full of rocks, and some large rocks, some medium-sized rocks, and sand. And he tipped it upside down and onto a tray and emptied it out. So, right, how do you get all of this back in the box? And so he said, if you start with the sand, the small things, and then put the medium-sized rocks, now try and fit the big rocks in. It's impossible. But if you put the big rocks in first, and then the medium-sized rocks, and then pour in the sand, it will all go back in the box. And it's a pretty clear anecdote that when you're lining up your day, you make sure that the big jobs get done, right? So the thing with your biggest client, the key aspects of the day get done, which for me, there's a few things. I said the exercise, the meditation, because they're my stabilizers, food, clearly, human interaction as much as possible. But in terms of then with work, you really prioritize what has to get done. Some things can can be done quickly at the end of the day because you can do 10 emails in an hour at the end of the day, but you don't start your day with 10 small jobs and then, sit down at the beginning and focus on priorities first.
But then, sorry.
No, I just said that way you'll get most of what you plan to do done. And
then if I follow your theory, are meditation and workout small things for you?
No, they're big things. So, but I mean, you can't do everything at the start of the day. I mean, you need to still space your day out in a way that makes sense. From a work point of view, the big jobs. But I've already inserted into my work. I mean, I often put into my work I use my work calendar during the day. I often insert into that. All right, this is an hour for the gym or an hour for information or whatever. So often, because if I don't, sometimes I will just end up working straight through the. And I know how valuable having those breaks is in the structure of the day. So even if they're not the thing that I do necessarily at the beginning of the day, they are kind of blocked into the day to make sure they don't get missed.
So you make sure you plan them. You make sure they are actually in your agenda.
Yeah, the things which need to happen in the day are blocked as events, if you like, and then the other spaces can be used for catching up on, like, thinking about projects or catching up on emails or things which can be a little bit less time sensitive.
Okay, I see. What do you think is essential in life?
People, happiness. No, it's very hard to say, right? I think it touches a little bit on what I said before. I think what I call an unemotional compassion, a relatively unemotional compassion, a sense of being able to understand that other people, everyone has trials and tribulations to deal with, and that your own challenges are not to be belittled, but that we're all going through these things. And I think it's the reason I'm such a fan of, especially sort of Taoist or Zen-based sort of Eastern philosophy, is because they focus very much on flow and that you are really part of what is and not separate from. And this, I know it's a very, we grow up, especially those of us from the West, with a very much a sense of an individual identity, which is very strong. And it's an interesting concept where you have to feel your identity and feel yourself, but not separate from and in conflict with everything around you. If you can feel that you're flowing with, Taoism uses a lot of kind of water-based metaphors, and Zen is very kind of air-based. But I think this is really the critical aspect of taking some stress out of your life, but also how to interact with other people. Because once you don't feel that you're fighting against what's going on, you're moving with it, you feel much more relaxed. When you have that approach in terms of your interactions with other people, but also try to understand things from their point of view, it also softens your edges. And I think this really balances me on two fronts.
So that's the path of least resistance. Like you go with the flow.
Yeah, but it's like how to say it, being a little bit like an intelligent river. You're still, you're looking for that soft spot through, but that's a smart way to go, right? Like, why bang your head against a really hard bit of rock? And then there's soft bit over there we can go through, right? So you still make wonderful patterns, and I think you can run these metaphors to kind of, beyond the point of realism, but how to say. I'm not someone which obviously takes the most difficult route. You're always thinking work smart rather than hard, right? I mean, you still have to work hard, but it's important to be efficient and to do things I think when you can do things creatively, you bring people on board with you. There's no need to go at life like you're trying to break down a brick wall, right? Just kind of see where there are opportunities and move in that direction, or link with people that link naturally. It's like chasing someone to be your partner who doesn't want to be with you. What was the point in that, right? So find someone that you like, that likes you, and then move in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Who is your role model, Stefan, or your hero? Who are the people who inspire you? If you have, of course. Assuming.
Yeah, again, I don't go down that route again because I don't like to put people on pedestals. I think I would say it's much more I look at people from history or in contemporary times that are interesting. And I think it's really interesting to compare how we perceive people that have maybe done quite similar things but history views them in very different ways. So conquerors or dictators from bits of history are often viewed very, auspiciously or in quite positive lights. And then people that have done quite similar things in more recent times, because we have a different perception of the world, are seen as brutal dictators or mass murderers. And I think because we often don't know, we kind of look behind the screen very well about who someone really is. I think it's not I like to look at what people have achieved and see, right, how did that person do that? And you can look at anyone from, you can find admiration in a Genghis Khan or Alexander the Great, who also committed great acts of brutality, but also, geniuses in terms of what they did and lived in much more brutal times. I think people who try to change perception through history and have gone against the grain. I'm not a Christian, but Jesus is quite an interesting character. He was clearly quite colourful and had a very unorthodox view on things. You have obviously people out of the Buddhist tradition, not least the Buddha himself. So, people they look at the world they can see the world from a different point of view and see through some of the mirage that we create for ourselves. But I can admire someone, just being a sports fan, I loved watching Steven Gerrard play football because he was the heart and soul of the team. He drove that team forward for, the best part of 17, 18 years. So I think it's more than I think you can take inspiration from anywhere and everywhere. And I actually think that becoming obsessive or, idolatizing people can be a little bit dangerous. Churchill is, the people that are in Russia, Stalin is the hero of the 20th century, and Britain is Churchill. And both of these guys have got some serious stains on their reputation, and both of them did what was required to defend their countries at times of great danger. And we fail to see people from two sides often enough, and therefore I don't put people on pedestals, but I think you can take inspiration from and also heed warnings as well. Look where arrogance or hubris have taken people into terrible places, and I think this is also where you can you can learn essentially from everywhere.
Anywhere, yeah, I agree with you. Would you be so kind to share an anecdote with us? If you have an anecdote.
I'm trying to think of an anecdote of any particular type. I was trying to think of something.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw this on the list and I was like thinking, what would I comment on? Because many of my anecdotes revolve around a huge excess of alcohol or doing something incredibly stupid. I'm trying to think of something off the bat which springs to mind. Life is full of so many individual moments that are that are important or relevant. I guess something, and this is quite a personal thing. When I was 29, if during my 20s, I was through my whole life extremely close to my father, and if someone had said to me that you will need to, in my 20s, if someone said you will need to, your father will die of cancer and you'll be the one looking after him at a critical point of life, I would have strongly questioned my emotional capacity to handle that situation. And when I was 29, I just finished work with one company and was changing, and he was diagnosed with terminal liver cancer. And I was very fortunate because I was not tied to a position at that point. I was free to move, so I was able to move home and spend time with my family. And this is not, I don't want to be, I don't want to come across as some kind of martyr here, but it was just, I was very fortunate to be in a situation where I could give something back to my parents, who I'd been very lucky with the quality of parents I was blessed to have. But I think the sort of point of the story is it's amazing the energy that you can find. My father was extremely mentally robust and needed my physical support as he became sicker. My mum, for obvious reasons, needed a huge amount of emotional support to help her through what was, losing her life partner. So I think my anecdote would be is that it's often when we look at potential situations in life that might seem overwhelming, it's amazing what the resources and energy that you can find in yourself when it really matters. And I think on the one side, it's important not to obsess about things that might or might not come to pass. But on the other hand, I think it's really important to know that within yourself you have a huge well of energy which can be tapped into, because you can't be burning at this level of adrenaline or this level of energy all of the time. You would kill yourself. But there's under the surface, you'll find that if it's a parent, a partner, a sibling, a child, a close friend, or even maybe a stranger that needs your help, there may be a lot more resource there than you had given yourself credit for. So on the one hand, don't worry about things that are not yet there, but on the other hand, have confidence that when things happen, you may well be able to cope with them better than you might ever have expected.
No, thank you so much for sharing. By the way, is there a person who changed your life? Who and why?
In a word, no. It's a little bit like the answer before, like many people and many influences. I think I'm someone that really
take from
every day. I'm always like, it's not, and it's something that you get better at as you get older, but I think it's something where you really you get better at listening, and despite the amount of talk today, but you get better at listening, and you learn to shut up a bit more and take things in from different perspectives. My father was extremely philosophical person. So in terms of probably the biggest influence on my early life, for sure, that was him, because he had a very open-minded approach to things and a very humane and compassionate approach to life. But following on from that, I think it's reading very widely. And again, I think it's more important to pull things from different places. It's not a bad thing to have people following any one person or one, it's avoiding cults and avoiding cultish behavior. And that can be a Donald Trump to a guru in India, to a Trump, to whoever, right? I think it's really important to bring in a multitude of sources of information into your life so that you can filter effectively. And not just filter, rather, but rather you can have a more multifaceted approach to life.
Yeah. And this is why maybe you have such an open mind as well. I noticed the way you think. What do you think the world needs the most today?
Some combination of less consumption and fewer people in about equal balance. This is a debate you hear a lot, right? So you have the Western point of view, which is like, oh no, we need a lower population of the world, and then you have poor people saying, well, if the West just consumed less. I imagine it's some combination of the two, but that's at a very physical point, in the sense that we are at the moment on a one-way track to a bit of a massive environmental disaster unless things improve very rapidly. So I think we need a unilateralism in the world right now. I mean, it's interesting to see how the West has combined in reaction to Russia, but realistically, the threat to Ukraine is infinitesimally small compared to the threat that we have from environmental factors. And unless the world manages to drop its barriers to each other, and it links to a lot of the themes we talked about over the course of today, right? So unless you can see things from an alternative point of view, to have a kind of an emotion-free compassion. It's not about that I need to, it's not about sympathy or an excess of empathy. It's to understand something from someone else's point of view. But that needs to be multidimensional very quickly, because otherwise we are really fucked. Things are going to happen in the next decades, which will impact in our lifetimes, and let alone our children's lifetimes. So the themes that I've talked about right the way through about having a multidimensional view of the world and a sense of compassion. But unless barriers start to come down pretty quickly, and people can see that unless we are all in this together, then we are really all going to be in the shit at the same time.
Yeah. Many people say that within this crisis, individualism is dead, that we really have to become more collective. We have to cultivate the collectiveness in order to get out of our main issues. And I agree with you that for me, one of the biggest issues right now are the environmental issues and the fact that our resources are not endless. That's the fact.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's and yet within that collectiveness, you need individual and sparks that drive technological change, because some of it is going to be about changing lifestyles and behaviors, but it will almost definitely involve some major technological achievements which will come through vast amounts of government investment, coupled with the best and brightest among us coming up with phenomenal ideas. It's kind of like a reverse nuclear bomb from the Second World War, something that could end the war quickly. Now we need something which can save the world from itself. And hopefully, the necessity of the situation tends to drive humanity in a positive direction. So I think it's always important to have hope, but it's also important to take personal responsibility for, I guess, what we can each do.
Oh yeah, each one of us has his responsibility, that's for sure. What is the best gift you can give or share?
It's a cliched answer, but of course it's your time and your love, right? It's the only thing that really makes a difference. You can, obviously, there are situations like now in Ukraine when it's hard cash. It's not I can sit and meditate of loving kindness for the people of Ukraine. It doesn't really do them too much good. But sending $500 to the Red Cross is something practical you can do. But the two things are not unlinked, right? It's your thought is informing your behavior. So whether you're reaching out to people on the other side of the world, the same things ring true. But I think on a day-to-day basis, it's knowing when you talk to people. I think one of the most important things is that people know they are being listened to. The most frustrating thing is that when you're talking to someone, they're on their smartphone, or they're on their app, on Instagram.
Happens a lot, actually.
Because it devalues the time that you spend. What's the point in that, right? So I think it's the nicest thing on a day-to-day basis is in your regular interactions is that people really know that you are there. And even if it can be for a minute, for an hour, but they really have your attention and your time and your understanding on obviously at a wider level, without again sounding too cliche, but a mixture of, a sense of compassion for people that you know and that you don't know goes a long way to smoothing over or to greasing the wheels of life in a better way, both for yourself and for the people you interact with.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you have any motivational recommendation for reading or to listen to? You have given already many recommendations or many examples, but do you have one that really could impact?
Okay, I might give you like three. So, one of the most beautiful books that I've read is a book called The Universe in Your Hand by Christoph Galfart. He was a PhD graduate of Stephen Hawking. Thankfully, he writes in a much easier to digest way than Stephen Hawking. I've read A Brief History of Time, and it almost caused my brain to melt because I'm not a science background. But The Universe in Your Hand is a very beautiful book, very easy to read, and gives a phenomenal understanding of the history of scientific development. And it gives an ability to understand ideas around, for example, quantum physics, which really help us to understand that what you see with your eyes is only one cut of the world or of the universe, and what is happening around you that you do not see is everything and everywhere all of the time. So it's this idea gives you a sense of perspective, a sense of both wonderment of the universe that you're part of, but also a sense of perspective that your view is and can only be one view. And therefore the importance of opening your mind as wide as possible is something that I think we all have a responsibility to do. So that's a great book, just for sort of mind opening. The other thing I use the app that I use is Sam Harris's app called Waking Up. His book of the same name is also excellent about the concept we spoke at the start of the talk. And on his app, he has a guy called Alan Watts, who they've downloaded all of this guy's talks from the 60s and 70s. One of the most interesting and inspirational speakers I've heard on life in general, but coming from an Eastern philosophical perspective. But I would pay the $100 or £100 per year for the app just to listen to these talks. If you enjoy the meditation side of things as well, then that's great. But I think those two things would be money well spent: the book and the app. And I think that would give any listener a very interesting some interesting alternatives for the year ahead.
Thank you so much for your time and your precious feedback. Stephen, do you want to add something? Is there anything you'd like to share?
I feel like I might have talked myself out for today, so it's probably good that I stopped there. Otherwise, people will stop listening of their own volition.
Well, thank you so much for the juicy content. I wish you best, and we stay in touch anyway. And thanks again for your time, and we'll share this on EDucaZia, my YouTube channel. And how can we reach out to you, Stephen?
I think you already can reach me at any time. So I don't have much in the way of, I don't have so much on the personal social media side. So I prefer to keep a bit more of a low profile. You can find me at LinkedIn. But if people would like to engage, probably LinkedIn, the company is called IWSR. So Stephen Turner, company IWSR, you'll find me as, I think, head of Asia Pacific is my glorified job title these days.
All right. Thank you so much for everything, and see you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Bye.